Hi all. This story will be about one of the most dangerous smugglers in America. Watch until the end. In the shady alleys of the city where the aromas of spices and smoke mingled lived a man named Nico. He was a master of secrecy and skillfully managed difficult situations. Nico was a smuggler specializing in the delivery and sale of marijuana, an herb that was in demand in the city no less than water in the desert. But the life of a smuggler has never been easy. Nico was forced to work in the shadows, always wary of the police and competitors. His only goal was to earn enough money to provide for his family and survive in this ruthless city. One day, while Nico was conducting his operation, he learned that his supplies were coming under attack. Someone began to intercept his cargo, and this posed a threat not only to his business, but also to his own safety. Determined to find out who was behind these attacks, Nico began his investigation, which soon led him to unexpected discoveries and dangerous situations. He had to walk the line between the desire to protect his business and life and the desire to preserve his principles. Thus began his story about the struggle for survival and the search for truth in a world ruled by money and drugs. Digging deeper into the investigation, Nico discovered that a local drug cartel was behind the attacks, wanting to seize control of all the contraband in the city. They took aggressive steps to force Nico out and force him out of business. But Nico wasn't going to give up without a fight. Together with a small group of loyal comrades, he developed a cunning plan for a counterattack. They decided to intercept the next shipment of marijuana destined for the cartel and use it as a trap. Under the guise of a routine delivery, Nico and his team acted secretly and carefully. They set up a trap, installing hidden cameras and listening devices to gain information about the cartel's plans. The plan was risky, but Nico was willing to do anything to protect his business and family. When the time finally came, Nico and his team prepared for the confrontation. They were able to intercept a shipment of marijuana, but found themselves in the middle of a shootout with gangsters from a drug cartel. In a tough battle, Nico and his comrades were able to fight back, but the cost was high. One of them was wounded. As they ran away from the skirmish, Nico realized that the battle had just begun. He vowed to return stronger and more determined than ever before to protect his family and save his business from the enemies standing in his way. Under the cover of night, Nico and his trusted comrades gathered in their hidden hideout to assess the damage and formulate new plans. First aid was provided to their wounded comrade, and their resolve only strengthened. They knew that the drug cartel would not stop until it destroyed them. Nico knew that to win they would have to be cunning and strategic. He began to mobilize his resources, including friends and allies he could trust. They collected information about the drug cartel's weaknesses and began preparing for a counterattack. However, when they tried to disrupt one of the drug cartel's big gatherings, they fell into a trap. An ambush attack was prepared, and Nico and his team found themselves surrounded by enemies. But Nico wasn't going to give up without a fight. The fighting was fierce and both sides suffered heavy casualties. Eventually, thanks to their skill and determination, Nico and his comrades were able to escape the trap and strike the enemy. They took advantage of the chaos to retreat and prepare for the next phase of the fight. After the dust settled, Nico realized that this war would continue for a long time. But he was ready for this. He realized that the price of freedom and family protection was never cheap, but he was determined to continue fighting until his last breath. And so began an epic battle between Nico and the drug cartel that will go down in the legends of this city. The windswept nights brought vague forebodings on their wings. Nico and his team were hiding in an abandoned warehouse, preparing for the next step in their fight. The wounds healed, but their resolve did not weaken. Under the cover of darkness, they entered the drug cartel's territory, trying to find a weak spot. Nico knew they would have to face cruelty and ruthlessness, but he was up to the challenge. In this game, only the strongest survive. But when they approached one of the drug cartel's warehouses, they were noticed. Suddenly, the shooting began, and in the chaos of the firefight, Nico lost control of the situation. In the thick of the battle, he lost contact with part of his team, and they had to retreat to survive. During the retreat, Nico realized that he was driven into a dead end. His business was on the verge of collapse, his team was scattered, and his family was at risk. He knew he had to act quickly and decisively before it was too late. Gathering his last remaining strength, Nico decided to take decisive action. He assembled his team and devised a daring plan that he hoped would turn the tide of the war in their favor. But the question was, could Nico resist the forces of the drug cartel and save his business, his family, and his life? With a heavy heart and pain from the loss of his comrades, Nico realized that the fight against the drug cartel was beyond his capabilities. Realizing that he could not defeat them in open confrontation, Nico decided to change his strategy. He called the remaining members of his team and announced that they would no longer fight the drug cartel. Instead, they will operate in the shadows, selling marijuana throughout America. It was a risky decision, but Nico understood that this was the only chance to save his family and his business. Nico and his team hit the road, building new connections and contacts across the country. They used their experience and skill to evade police and competitors, moving through dark alleys and hidden smuggling routes. As they expanded their business, Nico began to realize that nothing in this world was black or white, only shades of gray. He was forced to make morally difficult decisions to protect his loved ones and ensure their future. Nico became a well-known figure in the world of smuggling, but at the same time he continued to hide from the eyes of society and the law. He understood that his path was dangerous and unstable, but he was ready to do anything for the sake of his family and his business. After losing half his team and facing a drug cartel, Nico realized he needed to change his strategy to survive and provide for his family. Instead of continuing to conduct dangerous operations in the city, he decided to take his activities to the next level. Nico began organizing secret deliveries of marijuana throughout America. He created a network of reliable suppliers and dealers who helped him distribute his goods throughout the country. He used the latest technology and security techniques to evade police pursuit and arrest. While Nico strengthened his position in the world of smuggling, he also began to look for ways to get out of this dangerous game. He realized that a life of constant stress and fear was not worth living. Nico dreamed of returning to a normal life, without constant threat and danger. While Nico continued his deliveries and grew his business, he began to look for opportunities for his future. He considered various options, such as opening a legitimate business or moving to another city where his past could not catch up with him. After losing half his team and facing a drug cartel, Nico realized he needed to change his strategy to survive and provide for his family. Instead of continuing to conduct dangerous operations in the city, he decided to take his activities to the next level. After heavy losses and continued pressure on his business in the United States, Nico made the decision to expand his operations beyond borders. He decided to direct his gaze north, to Canada. Canada represented a new, underutilized territory for marijuana smuggling. Nico understood that this carried risks, but he also saw this as an opportunity to overtake competitors and strengthen his position in the market. He sent his best people to conduct reconnaissance and establish contacts on the ground. They soon found reliable partners among local suppliers and dealers who were ready to cooperate with Nico. The first deliveries to Canada were successful, and Nico began to see new opportunities for his business in this country. He continued to develop his contacts and expand his operations in an effort to capture his market share. However, as his influence grew in Canada, Nico faced new challenges and dangers. Local gangs and competitors tried to protect their interests and force him out of the market. Nico was forced to use all his skills and resources to protect his business and save his life. Meanwhile, his decision to begin shipping to Canada has drawn international law enforcement attention. Nico was forced to be even more careful and resourceful in order to avoid arrest and maintain his freedom. As Nico continued to expand his operations in Canada, his business grew so successfully that he became one of the most powerful and dangerous smugglers in the region. His name became known to everyone involved in drug trafficking. However, as his influence grew, Nico faced new challenges and threats. Competitors began to envy his success and sought to destroy his business by any means necessary. At the same time, law enforcement began to actively pursue him, trying to shut down his operations and arrest him. Nico was forced to be on guard and use all his resources and skills to protect his business and maintain his freedom. He expanded his network and forged connections with influential people in government and law enforcement to ensure he was protected and alerted to arrest operations. At the same time, Nico continued to look for new opportunities to develop his business and increase his power. He expanded his operations into new markets and partnered with international smuggling organizations to gain access to new sources of drugs and increase his profits. As Nico became one of the most dangerous smugglers in Canada, his influence spread to various areas of society. He became a key figure not only in the world of drug trafficking, but also in the fields of politics, business, and crime. Nico collaborated with various organizations and groups, including local criminal networks and international cartel groups. His contacts extended to the highest circles of society, including political elites and business magnates. But his influence and power caused envy and jealousy among his competitors. One day, Nico became the target of a brutal assassination attempt by one of his former allies, who wanted to seize control of his business. The assassination attempt was brutal and well planned. Nico was attacked in his luxurious mansion and his team was scattered. He was able to escape with difficulty but was seriously injured and lost a significant part of his property. After this incident, Nico decided that he could not trust anyone but himself. He revised his strategies and strengthened his security, becoming even more careful and secretive. He also began to actively seek opportunities for revenge and the return of lost influence. This incident became a turning point in Nico's life, causing him to reevaluate his priorities and strategies. He realized that the world of smuggling is a game of survival, where there is no place for the weak and indecisive, and Nico was ready to challenge all his enemies to reclaim his place at the top of the criminal world. Driven by growing competition and constant threats, Nico decided to use the most extreme methods to protect his business and eliminate competitors. He began hiring the most dangerous and professional killers to destroy everyone who stood in his way. These killers were masters of their craft, cold, merciless, and ruthless. They were known to be effective and invisible, leaving only a trail of terror and destruction in their wake. Nico gave them the task of eliminating anyone who posed a threat to his business or who competed with him for control of the smuggling market. This new strategy worked. Competitors began to disappear one by one, and their organizations collapsed under the blows of Nico and his assassins. Nico has become even more powerful and dangerous in the world of smuggling, making all his opponents afraid of his name and influence. However, using such extreme methods came at a cost. Nico began to lose his humanity and moral principles, becoming increasingly ruthless and cold-blooded. He forgot about the consequences of his actions, seeking only power and control. Ultimately, Nico realized that the price he paid for his power and influence was too high. He realized that he had become just as much a monster as those he tried to destroy, and now his main enemy was not someone else, but his own dark sides. Realizing that his power and influence in Canada were approaching the limit, Nico decided to expand his horizons and enter the most dangerous and mysterious smuggling country, Mexico. Mexico was known for its drug cartels and bloody conflicts between criminal gangs. It was a land where the law didn't say much and violence and corruption were the order of the day. But it was in this atmosphere of chaos and lawlessness that Nico saw new opportunities for his business. Nico gathered his team and prepared for the risky journey. He knew that in Mexico there was danger at every turn, and he had to be prepared for anything. But he was determined to go all the way to achieve his goals. Upon arriving in Mexico, Nico faced new challenges and obstacles. He had to establish contacts with local drug cartels and organizations to begin his operations in this dangerous land. He also faced opposition from local factions who were not ready to accept a new player on their territory. But Nico was persistent and determined. He used his experience and people skills to build connections and strengthen his position in Mexico. He was ready to fight for every piece of his territory and was willing to do anything to achieve success. Pablo Escobar, the legendary drug lord from Colombia, was known for his brutal and ruthless methods of running his drug empire. His influence extended not only to South America, but also beyond its borders. His organization was one of the largest and most powerful in the world of drug trafficking. When Nico decided to enter the Mexican drug market, he realized that he would have to face the most dangerous figures in this world. Pablo Escobar was one such figure. His presence in the market posed a serious threat to Nico and his business. Nico decided that the only way to protect his business and ensure his safety was to remove Escobar from the market. But he knew it would be an incredibly difficult and dangerous task. Escobar was surrounded by his fighters and an army of loyal supporters, and his defenses were impenetrable. Nico began to develop plans to eliminate Escobar, using all his resources and contacts. He gathered his best assassins and mercenaries to complete this task. They conducted thorough reconnaissance and planned every move to confidently attack Escobar and his organization. When the moment of action arrived, Nico and his team attacked Escobar's main bases in a massive operation. The battle was brutal and bloody, but Nico and his team were ready for anything. They fought with courage and determination to destroy Escobar and destroy his drug empire. After a large-scale operation against Pablo Escobar, Nico realized that his plan had failed. During the attack, Escobar managed to escape and disappeared into the shadows, leaving behind only traces of destruction and bloodshed. Nico and his team were confused. They were confident of the success of their operation, but now they found themselves in a very dangerous situation. Escobar remained free and his rage was inexhaustible. He launched a massive counterattack in an attempt to destroy Nico and his business. Nico realized that the situation was becoming increasingly tense. He and his team were forced to fight for survival in a hostile environment where every moment could be their last. They were at the center of a whirlwind of violence and madness, trying to protect themselves and their business from Escobar's vengeful attacks. But despite all the threats and dangers, Nico was not going to give up. He was willing to go to the end to protect his team and maintain his power in the world of smuggling. He knew that he would have to face Escobar again, and this time the outcome of the battle would be decisive. Thus, Nico and his team remained on the front lines of the war against Escobar, ready for any challenges that may lie ahead. Their story has not yet ended, and they were determined to fight until their last breath to protect their freedom and survive in this dangerous world of smuggling. After a thorough investigation, security agencies in the United States and Canada launched a coordinated operation to apprehend Nico and his team. Having broken into their secret bases and warehouses, agents arrested gang members and confiscated huge quantities of drugs, as well as all documentation related to criminal activities. Nico himself was arrested during a raid on his mansion, where he tried to hide but was discovered and disarmed by special forces. After mercilessly searching the house, agents found evidence of his criminal activity, confirming his guilt in breaking the law. After his arrest, Nico was taken to a prison facility where he faced serious charges of smuggling, organized crime, and other crimes. His business was completely exposed and destroyed, and his property was confiscated in favor of the state. While Nico and his former allies were behind bars, the world of smuggling continued to move forward, with new players ready to take his place. Nico realized that his era had come to an end, but even in his prison cell, he remained hopeful that his legacy would live on through those willing to carry on his legacy. In prison, Nico faced an unexpected and difficult test. He fell ill with cancer. The diagnosis was merciless, and doctors predicted only a short time for him. Nico was faced with a difficult choice: accept his fate with dignity or fight to the end. He chose the latter. During his remaining time, he abandoned inactivity and fought vigorously against the disease. He tried to get medical treatment in prison, hoping for a miracle that could save his life. However, despite his best efforts, Nico's condition continued to deteriorate. His health was so weakened that he could no longer resist the cancer cells. Nico passed away in solitary confinement in prison, surrounded only by his thoughts and sad memories. His death marked the end of an era in the world of smuggling, but his legacy lives on. Despite his criminal past, many remembered him as a powerful and determined player who steadily moved forward even when faced with the most difficult challenges. Nico's death was the end of one chapter, but it was also the beginning of a new one. His business may have been destroyed, but his influence remained alive in the hearts of those who remembered him as a legend of the world of crime.